I don't question. It's more of the fact that going back to Moses,
Mm-hmm.
like I feel like that takes a lot of strength in a sense to be that obedient, to be like, as God commanded him to do. Okay, I'll do it.
Mm-hmm.
It's like mom. It's like she didn't raise a quitter; she raised a complainer. Like I'll do it. She didn't hear about it. Like, it's just crazy how he was so committed and
Mm-hmm.
like it's weird and crazy that at least me, like I'll probably never be like at that level where Moses is at.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, that's just to me, that's just mind blowing how obedient he was.
Yeah, just a few generations later, it took two people to fill Moses' shoes, Barack and Deborah together.
Yeah, exactly. So that's really cool.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting though, because I think there's some scriptures to really support the idea that if you're obedient in small things, then God will give you greater things to do. And what that means is not necessarily greater, like they'll be like magnificent in other people's eyes, but he will give you greater responsibility. When we look at the whole life of Moses, we can see how he came up as a prince in Egypt. So like he was in a position of authority and power just because and really set apart in a lot of ways from anybody else in that culture. So he grew up in a way that the level of responsibility he would have had as like loyalty in Egypt would have been very different than the average person. So when he ends up in the wilderness for 40 years, where there's probably a lot of stuff he didn't want to do there, God was refining him. And I think like then you see this trajectory of like him coming up again and going back and facing Pharaoh and then we see all the stuff that follows. And it's like, I think that God had a particular purpose for Moses, and Moses said yes along the way, over and over and over and over again. And I think we have the same possibility in our own walk, is to say yes over and over and over again, and we don't know where that's going to take us. If you live in the West, like you could be born in a really poor family and not be royalty and end up in a position that's very powerful and with a lot of responsibility. By God's hand, you could. So I think my encouragement to you is that, like, I believe that we can all be like Moses in the ways of repeatedly saying yes to God. And wherever that leads us, we may look back and see, but I did some things that were really important to God. So we might not see how big it is, but we may see a glimpse of like that in our own life.
Mm-hmm. And
he's building that in you right now. All the little yeses that you're saying, even the ones that start with, I don't really want to do that, but the way that you come back and then do them anyway because it's the right thing to do, to be obedient, that's training. That's the repetitions. That's putting in the repetitions. Like when you go to the gym, they all say, you got to put in the reps to get the results.
Got a couple of things I want to add to that. Is that this period leading up to Deborah was kind of a period of anarchy. I mean, she laments that among 40,000 Israelites, there's nobody with a shield and spear. She wasn't saying they didn't have weapons. She was saying that there is nobody who's willing to step up and fight the enemy. Yeah. Everybody's just looking out for themselves if they're doing that. But if Israel had not gone through this rebellious stage where just full of selfishness, we wouldn't have Deborah. We wouldn't have these chapters in the Bible. So not saying that God made them do that. God didn't make Israel make bad choices, but he used it to bring something out that he wanted to tell. And from a much more personal, using a much more personal anecdote. We got married when we were 40. So there have been many times where we have lamented so many wasted years. Like, what were we doing for so long? Just wasting our time.
True.
But Moses spent 40 years as a prince of Egypt and then spent 40 years as a shepherd in the wilderness. In that whole time, he was probably thinking 40 wasted years in the court of Pharaoh. What in the world was that all about? And then at the end of 40 years in the wilderness, he's thinking, what have I been doing out here for 40 years? I should have been in Egypt rescuing my people. Well, 80 years wasted, but it wasn't wasted. It was God training him to be what he needed to be. God trained him in the court of Pharaoh so that he would know, how do you behave in the court of Pharaoh? How do you confront the most powerful ruler in the world as an equal or a better? And then 40 years in the wilderness, training him to be a shepherd. How do you lead people? How do you be the protege of the high priest of a people? So God was using these periods to train Moses into being the prince, shepherd of Israel in the wilderness, leading him through all of these years that seemed pointless at the time to bring him to something greater. And I can look back on those 40 wasted years, or years that appear to be wasted, and I made bad decisions that led to those wasted years. God didn't make me make those decisions. I did that all on my own. But God used it to lead me into places that would be of value to me later on. I learned things. In the middle of those wasted years, searching for answers to why I kept making these stupid mistakes, I came across discrepancies in my church's doctrines that said, well, Jesus teaches that marriage is this way because of Genesis. Paul teaches that marriage is this way because of Genesis. So why aren't we spending more time back here at the beginning in learning the way that God instructed people to live? Because apparently Jesus and Paul thought that's what we should do. So why don't we follow their example? And then the next thing you know, I'm throwing out the Christmas tree and keeping the Sabbath. You kind of have to go through those wilderness experiences to get to where God needs you to be. And sometimes it's not going to be pleasant. And God doesn't make us make stupid choices, but he will certainly use them to teach us things. This story of Deborah and Barack, it's very much like Isaiah chapter 3. All the people are fending for themselves. Nobody wants to take charge. The whole nation is apostate. And God, through Isaiah, is saying, I'm going to have to judge you people. Nobody will stand up and do what's right. All of your judges are worthless. Your princes are lazy bums. And there's nobody around who will take any authority. And one man says to his brother, you've got a cloak, which means he's got some money and authority. Why don't you take charge? And the guy's saying, I can barely take care of myself. I can't take care of you people too. And so God says, you're going to be ruled by women and children. And this isn't a curse. To be ruled by women and children is not a curse, despite how it sounds. It's just the natural consequences. When the people who are supposed to be in charge refuse to be in charge, God's going to take the next one. Who's willing?
The ones who will.
Yeah, the ones who will. Deborah was not a bad choice to lead the country, but she wasn't God's first choice. Barack was the one who was supposed to be leading. But because he was too scared, too doubtful of himself, he used Deborah. Deborah judged the nation. So,
the mother of Israel.
Yeah. So when the people that God put in place refuse to do what God called them to do, there's always another. It's what Mordecai told Esther, wasn't it?
Yep.
Said if you don't do what God's telling you to do, he's going to call somebody else.
Choose somebody else and train it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's like to me that's an encouragement, like to raise my hand, to be like, pick me. You know what I mean? Like it's an encouragement to know that like.
Yeah. Do you want those 40 years to be wasted or not?
Yeah, he could choose anybody. And so if he chooses you, you know, saying yes is like it's the only reasonable response is to say, yeah, absolutely. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the thing, like, I think about the most is like all the times I missed the opportunities to like say, yes, I'll do it. And I think that's what we see with Barack. Barack had feelings about the stuff and doubts, but instead of saying, okay, these are real feelings, these are real things I'm concerned about, but these are all about me. They're not about God. God is saying, go do this thing. Like he's gonna make a way. And it was the same with Moses when Moses was arguing with God, when God wanted him to go to Egypt and confront Pharaoh. It's the same kind of thing. He's like, Moses is like, but but I'm this and I'm this and I'm this, and it's like God's like, and I'm God. Like I mean, what else is there? What else is there to say? And I think that's the thing that we so easily forget, is we forget that like this is not about us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's about us,
Yeah.
not about us.
Right. It's not about me, it's about us.